It was just a rival.
Just a rival.
It was just competition. It was all about who is making bigger movies.
For decades, Arnold Schwarzenegger ruled Hollywood's action scene, headlining some of the biggest blockbusters ever made. But even at the height of his career, not everyone earned his respect. In fact, Arnold admits there were 6 actors he just couldn't stand. We're talking about names that range from action legends to surprising Hollywood icons. Now at 78, he's finally letting it all out. These are the 6 people who left him frustrated, angry, and in some cases downright disgusted. And the reasons why might shock you. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis didn't burst onto the scene as the tough action hero audiences later came to know him as. His career actually began on television, most notably with the show Moonlighting in the mid-1980s, where he built a reputation for his charm, quick wit, and strong comedic timing. So when his name came up for the lead in Die Hard, many people were taken aback. At the time, he was not seen as the type of actor who could carry a high-stakes action thriller. Director John McTiernan had envisioned someone much more traditional for the role of John McClane, someone closer to the archetypal tough guy. The studio's first offer went to Frank Sinatra, who declined. From there, the casting search ran through nearly every major star of the era: Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Harrison Ford, Burt Reynolds. Each of them was approached, and each one passed on the project. It was only after the biggest names in Hollywood turned down the opportunity that Bruce Willis was put forward. That casting choice was met with skepticism, not only by audiences but even by other stars in the industry. In fact, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had just come off a string of blockbuster hits, dismissed the idea that Willis could ever succeed as an action star. According to Nick DeSemlian's book, The Last Action Heroes, The Triumphs, Flops, and Feuds of Hollywood's Kings of Carnage, Schwarzenegger even joked about it publicly. At a dinner in Santa Monica shortly after Die Hard's release, he called out to Willis across the room, asking if he knew why he would never make it as an action star. When Willis played along and asked why, Schwarzenegger flexed his massive biceps and pointed to them, saying, "Toothpick arms." Despite the mockery, Schwarzenegger's prediction couldn't have been further from the truth. When Die Hard premiered in 1988, Willis redefined what it meant to be an action hero. His portrayal of John McClane was different from the muscle-bound, invincible heroes audiences were used to. Instead, he was vulnerable, sarcastic, and distinctly human. That contrast made the film a massive success and turned Willis into one of the most recognizable action stars in the world. Over time, the rivalry faded and gave way to friendship. Willis and Schwarzenegger would go on to work together in the Expendables franchise, and Schwarzenegger himself later admitted that Willis was not only a great action star, but also one of Hollywood's finest actors. In 2022, Willis's career came to a heartbreaking close. At the age of 68, his family announced that he had been diagnosed with aphasia.
You know, being given that diagnosis and then sent on our way.
A condition that affects communication, and that he would be retiring from acting. The following year, they shared that his condition had progressed to frontotemporal dementia. The news was met with an outpouring of support from fans and fellow actors alike. Schwarzenegger, reflecting on his friend's legacy, described him as a fantastic actor, a huge star, and above all, a kind man. Though Bruce Willis has stepped away from the spotlight, his impact is permanent. From redefining action movies with Die Hard to creating unforgettable performances in films like Unbreakable and Pulp Fiction, his body of work continues to speak for him. His career is remembered not just for the roles he played, but for the way he broke the mold and brought something real and human to a genre that once relied only on muscle and spectacle. Miriam Margolyes. In 1999, Hollywood released End of Days, a movie that tried to cash in on all the Y2K, end-of-the-world panic that was floating around at the time. On paper, it sounded like a big deal. Arnold Schwarzenegger facing off against the devil himself. In reality, the film was a mess, often remembered as one of the low points of Schwarzenegger's career and a sign that his reign as the ultimate action star was slipping away. Most people filed it away as forgettable, But oddly enough, the film has refused to fade completely into obscurity, and it's not because of the plot, the action, or the effects. It's because of one bizarre story told by Miriam Margolyes. Margolyes, who has built a reputation for blunt honesty and sharp humor, claims that while filming End of Days, Schwarzenegger deliberately farted in her face. She first shared the story on the I've Got News for You podcast, where she explained that she had never gotten along with him on set. In her words, he was full of himself, and she tried to avoid him whenever possible. But then came the moment that cemented her dislike. The two were filming a violent scene where Schwarzenegger's character was killing hers. Margolyes, playing the sister of Satan, was pinned down on the floor, unable to move. That's when, according to her, Schwarzenegger leaned in and intentionally passed gas right in her face. She stressed that while everyone farts, what made this unforgettable was that it felt deliberate. Years later, she still hasn't forgiven him for it. This wasn't the first time Margolyes had spoken on the incident. In past interviews, including one with Reader's Digest, she described the same moment, even recalling how furious she was at the time, shouting at Schwarzenegger in anger. She has also been open in criticizing his behavior more broadly. In one interview with The Guardian, she labeled him a pig of a man and accused him of being gropey with women, though she noted he kept things professional with her. What makes this particular retelling different is how much traction it has gained. Major outlets like Variety have reported on it, even reaching out to Schwarzenegger for comment, though he has yet to respond. The renewed attention might be partly due to the changing conversations around power dynamics in the film industry, but it also ties into Margolyes' current popularity. At 83, she's become something of a cultural icon, known for saying exactly what she thinks. Her appearances on The Graham Norton Show regularly go viral. Her recent memoir was a success, and clips of her blunt comments, like her viral takedown of modern-day England, circulate widely online. Of course, there's another layer of irony to the whole thing. Miriam Margolyes has her own history with flatulence, and it's one she hasn't been shy about sharing. She once let one slip live on the show This Morning, much to the delight of the hosts. In her sitcom bucket, she played up the gag in a yoga class scene. She even fulfilled cameo requests by farting on command for fans willing to pay the fee. Until recently, searching her name alongside the word fart would bring up a wall of these clips. Now, though, the search results are dominated by the Schwarzenegger story, almost as if she has unintentionally, or perhaps strategically, rewritten her own history. At the end of the day, whether the story is exaggerated, completely true, or somewhere in between, it's hard to deny how well it fits both characters involved. Margolyes thrives on outrageous honesty, and Schwarzenegger, larger than life in every sense, is exactly the sort of figure you could imagine doing something absurd just for the sake of it. And that's why, for all its flaws, End of Days may never be completely forgotten. Not because of the devil, not because of Y2K hysteria, but because of one unforgettable fart. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Arnold Schwarzenegger has shared the screen with plenty of famous actors, but not all of those pairings were free from tension. Over the years, his name has been tied to feuds, rivalries, and rumors, especially with other big names in the action genre. From Sylvester Stallone to Steven Seagal, stories about clashes and competition followed him everywhere. But one of the most talked about rivalries was with Jean-Claude Van Damme. In the 1980s and 1990s, both Schwarzenegger and Van Damme were at the top of their game. Their films dominated the box office, and fans constantly compared the two. Stallone had Rocky and Rambo, Schwarzenegger had Terminator and Predator, while Van Damme was carving out his own lane with martial arts-driven blockbusters. Even if no personal issues existed, the media loved to frame them as competitors. Neither man did much to shut down those stories, so the rumors only grew. Van Damme himself added fuel to the fire when asked about his peers. He admitted that Schwarzenegger's movies didn't move him emotionally. Instead, he praised Stallone for the drama and passion in Rocky and Rambo. He also spoke highly of actors like Christopher Walken, Steve McQueen, and Paul Newman, saying their films had real quality. Van Damme explained that movies such as The Godfather and The Deer Hunter represented the kind of artistry he respected most. Meanwhile, Schwarzenegger's work, though popular, simply didn't connect with him on that same level. That preference for character-driven storytelling also came up when Stallone approached Van Damme for the first Expendables movie. Stallone tried to lure him with promises of a big paycheck, but Van Damme pushed back, insisting he wanted to know more about the role itself. When Stallone couldn't give him much beyond the promise of good fight scenes, Van Damme declined. He eventually signed on for the Expendables 2, but even then he and Schwarzenegger never shared a scene together. The same was true in Last Action Hero, which only added to speculation about their professional relationship. Unlike Schwarzenegger and Stallone, who were often seen together and eventually grew close, Schwarzenegger and Van Damme were rarely linked in public. That made it harder to know where they truly stood with each other. Yet a few moments over the years offered insight. In March 2018, Schwarzenegger underwent heart surgery to replace a pulmonary valve, a serious procedure that made headlines around the world. On the same day the news broke, Van Damme went to social media to wish him a full recovery, calling him a friend and expressing hope that he would be back to full health soon. 2 years later, when Schwarzenegger faced another heart procedure, Van Damme once again showed his support. Van Damme also shared a candid photo of himself and Schwarzenegger bumping into each other at the gym. The meeting wasn't planned, but the picture captured both men smiling and looking genuinely happy to cross paths. That moment, paired with his earlier well wishes, suggested there was more camaraderie than rivalry between them. While Schwarzenegger has never openly commented on their relationship, he did visit Van Damme on the set of Universal Soldier, and the two posed for photos together. That alone makes it clear the idea of a bitter feud was exaggerated. The reality is more subtle. They weren't as closely linked as Schwarzenegger and Stallone, but they weren't enemies either. Over time, those glimpses, whether through kind words, visits, or a casual gym encounter, painted a picture of mutual respect rather than hostility. Sharon Stone. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sharon Stone shared the screen in the 1990 sci-fi classic Total Recall, directed by Paul Verhoeven. On set, the two stars got along well, but Hollywood being Hollywood, rumors still found their way into the story. At one point, Stone heard that Schwarzenegger didn't actually like her behind the scenes. What stood out wasn't so much the rumor itself, but how she reacted to it. Instead of worrying about what Arnold thought, she flipped the perspective and questioned why only his opinion seemed to matter in the first place. Total Recall had originally been a role Stone wasn't interested in. At the time, she wasn't eager to do another action movie. That changed the moment she learned Verhoeven was directing. She admired his work, and after meeting him, she was completely won over. The decision was immediate. If Verhoeven wanted her, she was in. That collaboration turned into one of the most memorable experiences of her career. Stone enjoyed working alongside Schwarzenegger as well, often describing him as a giant with the spirit of a big baby. She joked about how he wanted the whole team to succeed, not just himself, and praised his focus and dedication on set. One story she shared captured their dynamic perfectly. During rehearsals in a hotel room, Verhoeven was straddling Arnold on a bed, acting out how a scene should play. Stone teased them both, saying she'd leave them alone because they were so cute together. Beneath the humor, though, she respected Arnold's work ethic and found him more committed than many other actors she'd worked with. By 1992, Stone's reputation for being difficult on set had already taken shape. In an interview with Movie Line, she admitted there was some truth to the perception, but it didn't bother her. She made it clear that her priority in life was not to be nice, it was to be real, and honesty, in her view, was often mistaken for being difficult. She pointed out that actors who constantly complained about food, wardrobe, or directors were usually projecting insecurities about their own performances. For her, the more skilled she became, the more secure she felt, and the easier she was to work with. That's why the rumor about Schwarzenegger bothered her, not because it suggested friction with a co-star, but because it highlighted how much weight was placed on his opinion as the male star. When told that Arnold didn't like her, she pushed back with a simple but powerful question. Did anyone stop to wonder if she even liked Arnold? It was a reminder of the double standards women often faced in Hollywood. Still, Stone's working relationship with Schwarzenegger was solid. and their fight scenes together pushed her into physically demanding territory. She recalled the challenge of making her character's attacks look believable against someone of Arnold's size and build. That meant she didn't hold back during their fights, and he often ended up bruised and sore by the end of a shooting day. Stone admitted she left him black and blue more than once, but both of them laughed about it later. Despite the rumors and the occasional rough stunt, Stone always spoke warmly about Schwarzenegger in the years that followed. She respected him as a performer and called him a true movie star, someone who brought more than just muscle to the screen. James Cameron. James Cameron faced an uphill battle when it came to casting Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator in the 1984 film. At first, Arnold didn't even want the role. Fresh off Conan, he was worried about being typecast as another action star, who looked intimidating but barely spoke. The Terminator had only 27 lines, and Arnold was looking for parts with more dialogue and depth. He even admitted later that he begged Cameron not to cast him, fearing he might regret it. What makes the story even more surprising is that Schwarzenegger wasn't originally supposed to be the Terminator at all. In the early stages, he was being considered for the role of Kyle Reese, while the studio floated the idea of O.J. Simpson as the killer cyborg. But once Arnold read the script, he began giving Cameron suggestions on how a machine should move, think, and act. Cameron, who listened closely, realized that Schwarzenegger had an instinctive understanding of the character. By the end of their lunch meeting, he was convinced nobody could play the Terminator better. Even then, Schwarzenegger still had doubts. He wanted to stretch himself as an actor, not just play another near-silent action figure. Cameron reassured him by promising to shoot the character in a way that made him both the ultimate villain and, in a strange way, the ultimate hero. That reassurance tipped the scales, and Arnold accepted the role. Once filming started, Schwarzenegger occasionally tested Cameron's patience with his own ideas. At one point, he suggested a scene where the Terminator opened a refrigerator, grabbed a drink, and got drunk. He thought it would be funny and make the character more endearing. Cameron shut it down immediately, reminding him that machines don't get drunk, and making it clear that Arnold's job was to bring the script to life, not rewrite it. The biggest clash between the two came over a single line of dialogue. Today, it's one of the most famous movie quotes of all time, but back then it was just another line in the script. "I'll be back." Schwarzenegger didn't like how it sounded. He felt a machine would be more precise, saying, "I will be back," instead of the contraction. He argued with Cameron about it, insisting that it made more sense for the Terminator's robotic character. Cameron wasn't interested in debating. He fired back with a blunt reminder of who was in charge, telling Schwarzenegger that he was the writer and the line would stay exactly as written. That decision turned out to be one of the best calls Cameron ever made. Schwarzenegger delivered the line as instructed, and it became the defining phrase of his career. Now the success of the first Terminator film opened the door for a sequel, and in 1991, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, hit theaters. This time, though, the story took a surprising turn. Instead of being the ruthless villain, Arnold Schwarzenegger's cyborg character was reimagined as the protector. That shift in perspective didn't sit well with Arnold at first. Coming off the original film, he believed the natural progression was to raise the stakes. If he had killed 68 people in the first movie, then surely the sequel demanded even more carnage. He pushed the idea to James Cameron, pitching outrageous scenarios that included throat slashing, heavy artillery, and even running people down. For Arnold, it wasn't just about storytelling. It was about keeping up with other action stars of the time, particularly Sylvester Stallone, in what he saw as an arms race of on-screen body counts. Cameron, however, had no interest in escalating the violence. He found the idea of tallying kills for the sake of spectacle to be grotesque, and beneath the story he wanted to tell. His vision for the sequel was something radically different, a machine that didn't kill. He believed it would make the Terminator's transformation into a hero even more powerful, showing growth and a deeper emotional core while still delivering the action audiences expected. Schwarzenegger initially thought the idea was ridiculous. He couldn't imagine a Terminator movie without a trail of bodies. and he even argued for at least a few kills to keep the character's menace intact. But Cameron refused to budge. For him, the dramatic tension came not from how many people the Terminator destroyed, but from how he resisted that very instinct. In the end, Cameron's vision prevailed. Terminator 2 still packed in plenty of action, but the violence was reined in, and the film became not just a bigger spectacle, but also a smarter, more emotional story. Sylvester Stallone. A lot of people know Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger as larger-than-life global icons, but their journeys began in very different, very humble places. Stallone grew up in a middle-class home, and despite his tough on-screen persona, he was actually a shy kid, nicknamed Binky. Schwarzenegger, on the other hand, came from a small working-class village in rural Austria, where his family lived without many modern conveniences. Both young men shared one thing in common: big dreams of something more. Stallone used to imagine himself as Superboy, once even trying to leap off a building in an attempt to fly. Schwarzenegger's dreams were more grounded. He wanted to leave Europe and make it in America. But both of them found a source of inspiration in the same place: Hercules. For Stallone, it was Steve Reeves' performance as the mythical hero that lit the spark. He later shared a childhood drawing of Hercules on Instagram, saying that seeing Reeves on the big screen shaped his entire idea of what a man could be. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Schwarzenegger plastered his walls with posters of Reeves and another bodybuilder-turned-actor, Reg Park. Park became his ultimate role model, and years later, Schwarzenegger not only met him, but also built a lifelong friendship with the man who shaped his ambitions. With both men inspired by the same childhood heroes, it would be easy to assume they bonded the moment they crossed paths. But when their careers began to take off, they quickly became rivals. Their competition truly kicked off at the 1977 Golden Globes. Schwarzenegger was nominated for New Star of the Year for Stay Hungry, while Stallone's Rocky had earned several nominations. That night, Arnold won his award, and Stallone later admitted he could feel the rivalry starting to grow. When Rocky went on to win Best Motion Picture Drama, Stallone celebrated by hurling a massive bouquet of flowers toward Schwarzenegger, a dramatic gesture that cemented their feud. By the 1980s, Hollywood was hungry for larger-than-life action stars, and both men fit the bill perfectly. Stallone launched Rambo with First Blood in 1982, while Schwarzenegger muscled his way onto the scene with Conan the Barbarian. The rivalry escalated into a game of one-upmanship: who had bigger muscles, who carried bigger guns, and who could rack up the highest on-screen body count. In fact, Schwarzenegger's commando was altered just to surpass the number of kills in Stallone's Rambo 2. Arnold later admitted that he was disappointed when his Terminator 2 character wasn't a killing machine anymore, because in his mind he still had to stay ahead of Stallone's numbers. Looking back in his Netflix docuseries, he confessed that without Stallone, he might not have been so driven to push himself through the 1980s. Their rivalry wasn't just professional, it got personal too. Both men had connections with Danish model and actress Brigitte Nielsen. Schwarzenegger had a fiery on-set affair with her during the filming of Red Sonja, even though he was already in a serious relationship with Maria Shriver. Nielsen later described it as a no-strings-attached fling. Not long after, Stallone married Nielsen in a whirlwind romance that quickly turned toxic. Nicknamed Beefcake and Cheesecake by the press, their marriage collapsed within 2 years, with Nielsen later calling it a huge mistake for both of them. Their feud spilled onto the big screen as well, with both stars poking fun at each other through movie references. Schwarzenegger kicked it off in Twins by dismissing a Rambo poster. Stallone fired back in Tango and Cash with a jab at Conan the Barbarian, and even took shots at his own Rambo character. The back and forth carried through the 90s. Stallone's Stop, or My Mom Will Shoot, referenced the Terminator, Schwarzenegger's last action. Hero imagined Stallone playing the Terminator instead of him, and Demolition Man jokingly predicted Arnold as a future U.S. president. Even in True Lies, Jamie Lee Curtis's character quipped that she thought she married Rambo. While audiences laughed at the on-screen digs, the off-screen tension was much darker. Stallone admitted that they truly disliked each other, calling the competition unhealthy. Schwarzenegger echoed the sentiment, saying they each saw the other as the enemy who needed to be taken down. The animosity was so strong they couldn't even share a room without hostility. Their media battles only fueled the fire, with both stars hurling insults and criticisms at one another in interviews. Schwarzenegger's infamous 1988 Playboy interview became the peak of this press-fueled feud, where he ridiculed Stallone's image and even mocked his taste in fur coats. By the 1990s, Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were known as fierce rivals on screen, but off-screen they made a surprising move, going into business together. Alongside fellow action star Bruce Willis, the two became part owners of the restaurant chain Planet Hollywood. Their role was simple: lend their celebrity power by showing up to openings, posing for cameras, and drawing in massive crowds. The first location launched in 1991 and was an instant hit. Soon, Planet Hollywood restaurants were opening across the globe, and the actors' investments were paying off big. At its peak, Stallone's stake alone was valued at around $65 million. By 1996, the company had gone public and briefly reached a staggering $3.5 billion valuation. But cracks began to show early. In 1993, Planet Hollywood was sued by Hard Rock Cafe for allegedly copying its concept, and on top of that, the food itself earned a less than glowing reputation. By 1999, the company filed for bankruptcy. The brand survived, but without its star partners. Schwarzenegger exited in 2000, with Stallone eventually following. Even though the business venture fizzled, Planet Hollywood gave the two rivals something unexpected: time to cool off. Years of trading insults in the press shifted into something closer to camaraderie. Their bond only grew stronger as the possibility of sharing the screen became more real. There were near misses along the way. In the mid-2000s, a rumor circulated that Quentin Tarantino wanted both actors for his war film *Inglourious Bastards*. It never happened. Brad Pitt ultimately took the lead, but the buzz showed that audiences were eager to see Stallone and Schwarzenegger side by side. The main obstacle was timing. As Schwarzenegger later explained, either the scripts weren't right or the studios weren't fully behind it, so the collaborations kept slipping away. That changed in 2009 when Schwarzenegger made a cameo in Stallone's film *The Expendables*. Still serving as governor of California, he managed to squeeze in a quick 2-hour shoot on a Saturday, appearing in a short but memorable scene with Stallone and Bruce Willis. The film hit theaters in 2010, and Arnold went on to return for the sequels. 3 years later, the two finally co-starred as equals in the action thriller Escape Plan. Decades after their rivalry began, Stallone and Schwarzenegger have built a genuine friendship. What once was an icy competition has softened into mutual admiration. Instead of firing barbs through magazine interviews, the two now joke around together online, posing with movie props, carving pumpkins, and supporting charities in matching cowboy hats. Today, they rarely miss an opportunity to praise one another, though their banter still carries the sharp edge of two men who once defined Hollywood's action era. Stallone has described their relationship as one fueled by humor and competition, the kind that pushes each man to be better. He has even referred to them as the last of a dying breed, calling himself and Schwarzenegger the final dinosaurs of a muscle-bound age in Hollywood. After years of rivalry, their story has come full circle, two former enemies who in the end chose to stand side by side.